Hello, Herd, and welcome to another episode of the Herd Main Show. I'm your Herd leader, John Wayne.
You sure?
I think so.
I'm your.
I don't know who I am today sometimes.
I'm Megan. I'm
Uh,
here.
yes, we're both here, and we're here to talk about Star Wars, as per usual here on the main show, and semi-relevant Star Wars because just recently a new book was released for Star Wars.
Yes, it
From a
was.
Certain Point of View Strikes Back. And if you've listened long term, I wouldn't say we talk about it often,
We talk about it a lot. Like,
but not like if you've listened to the last 5 episodes, we've already referenced it. But like if you've listened for a while, you've heard us talk about the original From a Certain Point of View,
hmm
which, if you don't know, is a novel of 40 short stories celebrating the 40 years since the release of the original Star Wars. And of course, 3 years later, Empire Strikes Back was released. So 3 years later, well, 43 years later, we get From a Certain Point of View Strikes Back.
yes, we do.
Hopefully, 3 more years, we'll get Return of the Jedi. And then hopefully 16 years later, we'll get The Phantom Menace,
I,
and so forth
mm,
and so on.
I genuinely hope that we do not have to wait that long because I don't think I have the
Well, we can't
patience.
make it 40 years old early. Like,
I know, but like, I wish they did it for like another anniversary,
hmm
like maybe 25 years.
I mean, I guess they could. I just would hate that there would be so few stories. Because part of the
Yeah.
appeal of these is that there's so many stories to tell that you get such a variety.
hmm
And I think that's what I love about the original, and they proved again that that's what's great about the second one, because you don't just get the main characters. Because if you did the 25th anniversary, you could do the main characters.
Yeah.
But we want to know about people that didn't have names before. We want to know about people that are just in the background. Like, we
Yeah.
want to know about Cantina aliens. Like, and that's the whole thing. And I was telling someone this on social media this morning. When you read these books, you don't watch the movies the same way ever again
Oh yeah.
because it adds so much. Unlike other things where it's like, oh, this other event that we'll never really see. Okay, so for instance, Master and Apprentice, the novel. Um, we won't see that. We won't see Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor tag teaming again as Qui Gon and Obi Wan in a film or something like
Yeah.
that happened over there. Now things happened there that influence what we see in the film. Sure, so like, oh, that little fight that they have about disobeying the council, I see where that happened. Like,
Yeah.
uh, but you don't see what informs those. This is different because literally there's no story that takes place that doesn't have influence in one form or another from what you're seeing in the movie.
Yeah.
So as you're watching this movie, the things you can almost pick up on what what did the author pay attention to in the scene they were given
Yeah.
to inform their story. Like, oh, he just is the guy making sure that the ships are out of range or whatever, and then, well, what would be significant about that? What if he had a personal attachment to one of those ships?
Yeah.
You have, um, well, hey, those four aliens seem to be playing a card game together. Why would they be playing that card game together? So forth and so. Why doesn't the bartender like droids? Like, all of those little things that inform the 40 short stories that we get, it's crazy. And
hmm
so when you know those things, all of a sudden it's not just a radar technician, all of a sudden it's not just four random aliens, all of a sudden it's not just a bartender with a grumpy attitude. Like, it's incredible.
Oh yeah.
Everybody gets enhanced, everything gets enhanced. And when you have that in your mind and you go back and watch the movie, it's phenomenally different. And I'd argue if episode 4 is like not on high on your favorite list, read the book, and then yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll bump up at least maybe one.
Maybe one or two.
So, not that you need much more reason to like Empire Strikes Back. It is the best Star Wars, but,
Whoa.
well, I mean,
Hot
in my
take.
personal opinion.
I agree to a point.
Hmm.
I think that it is the best made um dear lord, what are the original trilogy?
Hmm.
No, that's not to say that the other two are bad, but like I think it was very well made.
Hmm.
Just in film in general.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's very good in a lot of ways. It
Mm-hmm.
there's I mean, again, it's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that there's any specific evidence to it being like I feel like for me that's the most viewable with no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Second would definitely be the Phantom Menace, and third would be the Last Jedi.
Mm.
So it's literally just based on the fact that I can watch those, and I personally either don't care if there's something that I'm kind of on, or don't have anything I'm
Mm-hmm.
on. Um, that's kind of my basis on how I put certain films higher versus lower is I love these movies, but there's just that one part where I'm just like I kind of tune out, but then it comes back to me. I mean, I don't think it's unfair or unfan like to say that there's parts of certain Star Wars movies where we all are just kind of like, oh, okay, this is the part I can look at my phone for a minute. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, people feel that way about the Phantom Menace. I
hmm
know a lot of people didn't enjoy the Senate scenes. Like, they thought that they were boring. That's personally some of the best Star Wars, in my opinion.
which I
Like,
think retroactively, kind of like what we're talking about with the books, has been made better by all the Clone Wars stuff.
exactly. Like, it lays the framework for Palpatine's rise to power. If you're not paying attention,
hmm
then it's very easy to sit back and think, well, how did he become emperor?
Well, and I think that's what's happened is people got on the other side when all the pieces were put together and then realized the things that weren't interesting in the first movie
Yeah.
are interesting because if you're watching the whole, it doesn't look as whoa, they just gave him all this emergency power. Like, well, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen, he's been working towards that since the
He
beginning.
like he is responsible for the blockade that they are fighting in the first movie. Like,
Yeah,
it makes me so angry when people don't like the Senate stuff.
yeah.
Well, it doesn't make me angry. It makes me sad for them.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, I think if you've given it genuine tries, then
Yeah,
that's just you, and that's
fair
fine.
enough.
But if you kind of have bandwagoned or just kind of tuned
Yeah,
out, um, I don't think that's been fair to the movie.
yeah.
Um,
Sorry, we got off on a
so
tangent.
yeah, but all relatable. So you don't need much more reason to like episode 5 if
Hmm.
you're me and agree with me. But maybe you're different, and maybe that's not as high on your movie list. Ooh, I gotta be careful with my hands; they're dangerous weapons.
They are
Um,
dangerous.
but regardless, there's much to be had and added to your viewing of that with the new book. And having interacted with some of the artists
Yeah,
artists, I mean they are artists,
they
artists of
are word
words.
artists.
Some of the authors
Yeah,
of From a Certain Point of View, like when this came
yeah,
out, we were baby podcast. No,
yeah.
we weren't even a
We weren't
podcast.
even a podcast.
Oh my
You had just read
gosh.
it and told me about it, and then you made me
Yeah,
read.
we weren't even real.
Yeah, you
We
made
weren't
me.
alive.
You made me read the Organa story, and I got sad.
Yeah,
And then I didn't want to read the rest of the book for a
which
while.
is one we have talked about on the show before. Was about Brea.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so when this came out, we weren't even real. We weren't Nerd Herder. So
Did we exist before we put it on camera?
no, it's like Unis Honest. It didn't exist before, and it won't exist after.
I don't want to talk about it.
Um, so we had no interaction with these people. Like we've retroactively met these people,
Yeah.
but for all intents and purposes, um, now it's kind of weird. But like
Yeah.
authors that are creating Star Wars stuff, because we have a podcast, we can talk to them on
Yeah.
Twitter.
Like, we have interacted, like, friend of the show, Michael Morisi.
hmm
We've
Which
talked to
we
him
were
about
so
so many
yeah,
things.
which we talked. I remember it was so significant when we got to talk to him
Yeah.
when he was writing his first Star Wars story, and here he is now in a novel and everything like that. And I mean, we don't have any investment in that. We didn't do anything to help him get there, but it at the same time, when we saw his author credit, it was awesome
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's just like, hey, yay, we know how much he wanted that. Like, it's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. It's like when a friend gets an award at school and you're the person in the crowd just cheering the
It's like,
loudest. Yay!
yay.
He just Star Wars!
But so many great authors. Some have returned, some new, which is
Hmm.
exciting, and all kinds of great stuff. So definitely check that out. It's out now. You can get it on Audible. Do
Yes.
recommend that. I actually This is one of the books I recommend getting both if
Oh
you
yeah.
can swing it because they have a great voice cast. And on top of that, it's also nice just to support the physical edition. And, we got the Audible version first. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
get the physical edition this weekend.
Because I
Um,
got that Barnes and Noble hookup.
right? So we will talk about the new one after we give it some time to linger out there and for plenty of people to read it. A lot of people got oh, what do they call them? Like early editions
Advanced
or
copies.
yeah.
Yeah.
They got the hookup. We're
Which
not bitter.
we get at work, but we didn't get for this one.
Sure.
Because Del
Well, you don't
Rey,
get the early edition.
we do.
You don't. Well, you don't. Yeah, but you can't sell it. You can't have
No.
it.
Yeah, we can.
No, you
Booksellers can take them home.
really.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Those books that I brought home not too long ago, like they send home author copies. Well, not author copies, but advanced copies, and
Mm-hmm.
I brought them home. They're the same author that did the Spiderwick Chronicles, so I was like, "Ooh, gimme!"
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, where were you?
We didn't get this one. We don't have an affiliate with Del Rey.
You need to work on it, Tom. Let's work on it.
Tom.
Anyway, so we didn't get an advance copy
No, we did
because
not.
somebody doesn't have the hookup. But nonetheless, we want to give people plenty of time. It's a 15-hour audio
Yeah.
novel, and if you read like me, that's 24 hours of actual physical reading. So,
And if you read
um,
like me, it's about 5 days.
yeah. So, so what we wanted to do instead was talk about the original leading up to that because the whole idea, and we're not going to talk about every story because it's 40, that's too much. We're not going to also take over multiple episodes to do that. But we wanted to do enough to convince you should check this out.
Yes.
So if you haven't read it, for the 5 stories we're going to talk about, there are spoilers. So
Yes.
there you go. They are sort of significant. I mean, at the end of the day, nothing happens entirely that you wouldn't already know about from the film, but other events around the context of those points happens that would be if you want to experience them for yourself.
Yes.
I don't recommend listening to
And
this.
there is one that I specifically recommend that you do not listen to that segment. You read it for yourself and get the feels so hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the radar technician one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which
Has
one?
no spoilers.
No
But
spoilers. But
and
it
that's a
hurts
perfect
you.
example. Yeah, there's no spoilers for story. It's literally just spoilers of like feeling genuinely
Yeah.
and firstly
Because
what's going on.
yeah, there is something so special about a story that punches you in the chest and
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel so hard because you know the context,
Mm-hmm.
but the unreliable narrator
Which is
does not.
what many of the authors chose to do was
Yes.
I'm gonna make you remember this like
gonna make you-
insignificant moment. I'm gonna make you feel it.
Yeah. Well, like I don't know. Are we going to talk about the Organa story, or have we already?
We talked
Talk
about it
about it.
before, so no,
Yeah.
not on this one.
The moment where they.
Oh, that's where she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, like the planet
Yeah.
blows up.
Like, well, the moment in the story
I know.
where they see the space station,
Mm-hmm.
that hurt me deep inside when I read
Mhm.
it for the first time.
Yeah,
Like, I just.
and that's what I mean. There's many a story like that in these 40. That's all about hey, we're making a moment hurt.
Oh, yeah. It hurts.
So it's like a season of Doctor Who up in here. So yeah, so spoiler alert up front. Just go ahead and tune out if you want to check it out for yourself.
Yeah, there is a skip button on it
if
on
you want to-
Spotify.
Kind of hear it out and see if you want to check it out, then feel free to enter. So yeah, this was out in 2017. Like I said, 40 authors. It was amazing. The audio book version is great as well. Usually they have their first call list, which usually includes like Mark Thompson. He usually just does most of the books. He has for a very, very long time. They
Yeah.
got a lot of other people, great people to do it, except for John Hamm. He can suck an egg. But everybody else was great.
You don't like John Hamm, and I don't know why.
I don't know, but he's definitely not my boba. Hashtag not my boba.
You haven't seen him on SNL. That's the thing.
Don't need to.
All right, fine.
It's fine. He's on there with Elijah Wood. Him and Elijah Wood can go suck an egg.
Wow.
Just go suck a dragon egg.
Wow.
Anyway, so For the first one, we're going to go in chronological order, just because that's how that goes. So if you're reading the book, it starts from the beginning of the movie and goes to the end of the movie, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so you can almost like pick it up, read, watch a little bit, read, watch a little bit. It's interesting. If anybody wants to try that, let us know. So the first one is Ramus by Gary Whitta, which is impressive because Gary Whitta had some um, writing credit with Rogue One and everything. So for anyone to talk about the events immediately after Rogue One, it's
Yeah.
very appropriate that it's Gary Whitta, who is a very cool guy. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect. It's what's going on, but in the perspective of Ramus, and that's what it is. From a certain point of view, it's from every point of view except who you think it should be for the scene.
Yeah.
So, like opening scene, it's you would think it would be. I guess technically it should be C-3PO because he's who we first meet, and that's who we're kind of catching up with.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with this, it's like no, you get that in the movie. You get their point of view there.
Yeah.
We're going to look at this guy. And so Ramus Antilles is the captain of the ship, the, right hand man of Princess Leia and
Yeah.
everything. And he's the one that gets choked out by Darth Vader.
He does indeed.
And really, all this story does, as many do, is just to fill the gap between what happens before that, and now that we have Rogue One, what happens after that. It literally picks up after the whole scene of, in Rogue One, the ending, what did they send us? And Leia says, hope. And, like, the first line is literally after that. Hope?
Yeah.
What?
I love the opening of this story where it's just like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's like, she's
Sure,
so
Leia.
vague sometimes. And it's just trying to like figure out what's going on. It also rationales how the Empire tracked them down. They had a leaky reactor when they jumped into hyperspace, so they left a trail, and also they left Rogue One in hyperspace. So why are they in regular space then?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because of the leaky reactor, they
Yeah.
eventually just stopped. Like it stopped working, so they just enter regular space, which made it easier for the Empire to catch them. There's a lot of rationale in this one. Like, why did they go to Tatooine? Why wouldn't she go to Alderaan? Why wouldn't she go to Yavin 4, where she was sent from, and all this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff? Um, a lot of people would probably think of it as fixing plot holes, or maybe not necessarily
Yeah.
plot holes because that's negative, but like just
Adding context.
well, I mean, and that's essentially what it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, but is it wrong to fix things on the back end?
Well, that's the thing is it a lot of plot holes.
Mm-hmm.
For those audio listeners, I'm doing air quotes. But if we're a lot of so-called plot holes, if you stop thinking of it as a gap in the story and start thinking of it as our characters are unreliable narrators,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know the full context of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, how could they know about this or
Mm-hmm.
this or this? Like it wasn't their story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. Like I don't like the term plot holes.
Mm-hmm.
There are some movies with very blatant plot holes. None in the Star Wars universe, in my opinion. But like I just think it's a lack of context.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with coming back later and adding context to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that if it's a perfectly reasonable explanation in the get-go, it's one of those things where if you want to talk about it, sure, but I mean, I don't really think you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of those stories where you don't have to explain all this stuff, but if you want to, sure, cool.
Yeah.
Um, because really, I mean, again, it's really just from Ramus's perspective at the same time. So he's also kind of going through the checklist of okay, things are bad, it's not great. The Empire's probably going to find us. He's kind of
Yeah.
going through his checklist of what do I need to do and get into order if this does go as bad as it's going to go. And one of the reasons this is my favorite, one of my favorite stories, and I think I've mentioned this before, is because of the last line where he's getting choked out by Vader, and the whole time he's been trying to write letters to his family
Yeah.
in the event of his death. He didn't get to do that. That first tragedy of the book, and in the end, he's thinking about that, but he's also thinking about how, but Leia got away.
Yeah.
Leia has a plan. She's going to do this. She always has something she can do, and blah blah blah. So it's going to be okay. And so like the last line is like, in the end he hoped, or
Yeah,
something like that.
I love that.
And
And
and that's the thing. He still dies.
yeah.
He's always still going to die, but adding the positive connotation to it
Yes.
is very cool.
Yeah.
And I just love that one liner.
Yeah. And we also get the physical description of what it feels like to be force choked.
Yeah.
Like the iron grip was around his throat. I
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean both hands are mechanical at this point, so yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
vice grip. Um,
That's awesome.
so yeah, I mean, first out the gate kind of gives you the perspective of what every other story is going to be. It's, hey, we're not going to focus on who you think is important.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, they kind of stray away from most of the main characters. Either they talk about them, peripherally,
Mm-hmm.
through other characters, or through moments that we don't get.
Mm.
So if we're going to talk about Obi-Wan, we're not going to talk about things you see. We're going to do something else, which
Yes.
leads us to our next story,
Very good
which
story.
is Master and Apprentice. This now, although I'm going through these stories, that we
Chronologically.
picked, the five we picked chronologically, this is not the next story. This is not the second story.
No.
We're skipping around because we only picked 5 of the 40. So we're not talking about everything. We're not jumping immediately and next. So if you're following along at home, this one's a little bit later because this happens on Tatooine. This happens
Yes.
after Luke and Obi-Wan discover the Jawas have been murdered,
Mm-hmm.
and Obi-Wan deduces it's stormtroopers. They're looking for the droids. They figured out where the droids are. So this is right. This is while Luke's gone. Luke goes to check on Owen and Beru.
Mm-hmm.
We see that in the film. So what's Obi-Wan doing while Luke is out there, having his little farm boy heart broken?
Well, he's cremating some bodies.
Well, yeah, and talking to his master.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jawas don't matter; they're dead. What matters is the dead guy that can still talk.
Yeah, I do. I love this. I almost said scene, but this story. It's
Hmm.
so. It's so Qui Gon.
Hmm.
Like, I love his just matter of fact speaking of like, well, you're gonna have to train him.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm.
Like, I just love. I love Qui Gon for many different reasons, but
Hmm.
I just love how supportive he is of Obi Wan as well,
Hmm.
even as an old grungy old man.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, they highlight in there that they recognize and still play that master and apprentice role. Like,
yeah,
just because Obi-Wan has had all these years of experience and has aged far beyond what,
yeah.
well, not far beyond, either right around what Qui-Gon's age was, because I think canonically he's like supposed to be 60 in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
So Jedi be spry for their
Jedi,
age.
they do be spry. Or in Obi Wan's age,
Well, 2 sons,
Gruntles.
lots of depression. Yeah, that'll do it to you.
That'll do it.
Uh,
He's
so,
probably been smoking some death sticks. Let's be honest.
got to get through it somehow. So yeah, and what's interesting about that? Well, first of all, it's the perspective is Qui-Gon, who
Mm-hmm.
never appeared in this movie. So this inserts him in because I mean, of course, it makes sense that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon would have. We know they would have communed and talked to each other because
Yeah.
Yoda sets that up in Episode 3. So to get the payoff of that, of this is happening, this
Mm-hmm.
has happened, this happens often, actually.
Which makes me want that Attack the Clones certain point of view so much. Because, like, I feel like the first time he talks to Qui Gon would be, like, a
Well,
good
he wouldn't
story to
learn.
have.
He doesn't know that
Oh,
by that point. So
aw,
no. Now,
beans.
I mean, I'm sure that scene might happen maybe later, but
True.
you know,
Yeah,
he wouldn't have had it at that point.
very
So,
true.
um, and we get the perspective from Qui Gon of what it's like to be a Force ghost,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting.
Yeah, like he talks about becoming physical, which explains how Force Ghosts are kind of able to interact with certain things in the, I guess, physical world.
Hmm. Yeah, Claudia Gray plays it very ethereal in the sense because like it starts off with that like, so he's summoned by his name,
Mm-hmm.
but in the Force, he merely knows it as the name a, of the being he used to be, not who
Mhm.
he is.
The artist formerly known as Qui-Gon.
Right, because he is now the Force.
Mm-hmm.
So it plays out in this transition of pulling away from the big ethereal spiritual realm and kind of focusing in on, this little vessel of a being that
Mm-hmm.
is Qui-Gon. And so it's really this like super like galaxy mind enlightenment thought of, you really, they've moved on, they become one with the Force. Like we see what that means. It
Mm-hmm.
means you're part of the whole big picture life. And now this Jedi skill is to be able to bring yourself from that all to the one.
Yeah.
So instead of just going on and being all for the rest of eternity, you are able to return as the one you once were. It's weird because it's not like heaven where I think a lot of people, which I'm not saying this is what heaven's like. We can talk about Revelation later, but like people imagine it's this like waiting room. Like you just go up there and you're just hanging out with God and you're just waiting on the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the story to end. And it's just like you're seeing everything, you're experiencing everything, and a lot of people have that just idea of, oh, they're looking down on you and seeing this and all that other stuff, and it's just like I guess some people would kind of fill in the gap and think the Force death is like that. You're just up in heaven, you're in Force heaven, and you're just there. And when they ask, you just come down and hang
Yeah.
out. But this plays it very, very different, and this kind of goes to why. Well, why didn't Qui Gon just come and talk to Anakin? Why didn't Anakin just come and talk to Ben? It's this idea that maybe it doesn't work like that. Maybe they don't necessarily consciously choose
Mm-hmm.
to appear. They appear when called, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't think it's like I don't think Octo was haunted like
Right.
with Luke's Force Ghost, but I think in that moment Rey needed to speak with him,
Well,
and therefore.
and that's what I mean. I'll be interested when we are able to get to that story with Return of the Jedi, because so in Return of the Jedi, after Yoda dies, Luke's walking around and throwing rocks, and he's like, Ben, why didn't you tell me? He says that, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that wasn't the call.
Yeah.
If Obi-Wan wasn't like, oh, God, he said my name, that's a call, like because he appears right after that.
Yeah, and he was like, "Listen here."
Right. So, but then, in so that's in Return of the Jedi. But like you said, in the Rise of Skywalker, I wonder if in that moment she's thinking like, Luke was right. It's better if I just don't get involved. Like she's thinking it.
Yeah.
I know that's one of those things where you're like, oh, that's a plot hole that fixes a thing. But I'm like, this sets up the idea.
Yeah.
The
The
ghost,
goat.
the ghost has to be called. They have to be willed
Yeah.
into being again.
Or you, to go even sillier, Luke has a little light going off in his brain, just like, oh, Ray's doing something stupid.
Right.
Ben's doing
Well,
something stupid.
again, it adds that idea that they don't just show up when they want to. They can't.
Yeah.
They show up when they're needed and called. And I think that adds a lot to the significance of when they appear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I mean, because then it's a matter of, wouldn't they just stay here forever?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they just continue to be like, it's not about living again. You've already lived, you've moved on now. It's about being able to be a part of the big picture and the individual picture at the same time, while
Mm-hmm.
also not at the same time. Because what's interesting is even when Qui-Gon is with Obi-Wan, he's still he's still connected with the whole big picture.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, like he goes far beyond all this other stuff, and like it's
Yeah.
so crazy.
It
Um,
it gets like miskatonic there for a little bit, where it's
mhm.
just like he knows what's about to happen to Obi-Wan.
Oh yeah, and he makes reference to it quite often.
Yeah.
So like if you're at all interested in the Force ghosts and all that other stuff, this doesn't
Yeah.
answer all questions. This doesn't provide as a how-to guide or a complete answer guide, but
But it makes sense.
it's really good if you're interested in that stuff. And we haven't even talked about some of the things. We didn't even talk about what they talk about, what they discuss during
Yeah.
Qui-Gon's visit and everything like
You're
that.
gonna have to watch it, or read it, or listen to it.
Something. You're going to have to do
You're gonna
something.
have to
You're
consume it.
going to have to do something today. So moving on, next we have Lena. I really love this one. The name alone lets you know that, what? Who the heck is that?
This one
And
hurt me.
this one I love. This one is probably
Yeah.
definitely in my top 5 of all of these stories.
If you have not read the book, if you're thinking about it, do not listen to this segment. Go read it.
Yeah.
I cannot recommend this one enough.
Hmm.
If you are a fan of just,
I knew you would like this one.
it hurt. I don't normally like father daughter stories because they make me cry
Hmm.
because I love my dad. So this one, it hit me in a special way.
Hmm. Wait, I'm a daughter.
Wait, oh no.
Right.
My father sent me away at what? No, he didn't.
So made reference to this one earlier. This one is about a radar technician named Rayland
Mm-hmm.
or Ryland.
It's
How did
Ryland.
they pronounce Ryland?
It's Ryland. I didn't like the name, but if your name's Ryland, whatever.
You're probably all
You're
right.
probably okay.
So on Yavin, this is the guy that sits in the crow's nest and uses the manual. It's probably because Yavin it's just a temple. It's not high tech. They retrofit it a lot, but it's more than likely to be like, hey, we don't have full planetary radar, so we need to spot ships going up and out and making sure everything's okay.
Yeah,
That's probably why they have the radar technician, I
probably.
guess.
But it's mostly probably just because it's a neat shot.
Right. Oh, it is very is. So, the whole thing with it, I'm sure, was the idea of how do we make that significant? What if we make it personal? What if we make a ship that he's seeing personal? And what I
Yeah.
love is, so they start with that. They start with up front, he is watching the ship carrying his daughter
Mm-hmm.
leaving.
Oh, we completely forgot to mention this is by Will Wheaton.
I mean, it was going to get in there one way or
Oh,
another. But yeah,
sorry.
it's written by Will Wheaton. That's why it's depressing.
If you don't know who Will Wheaton is, shut up, Wesley.
Yeah, Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
The best Star Trek.
He's a decent guy.
He is a very cool guy.
He like anyone has parts of them that people aren't biggest fans of. I get that. Some people like me, but also don't like certain things I do. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's perfect. I get that for some reason he's very polarizing somehow in the geek
Yeah.
community, but
He's very open about his political views.
sure.
Which to some can be polarizing.
Hmm.
To others, meh.
Yeah. So all that to say, as far as fandom and geekiness, he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
So and a great author.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
So yeah. So the ship carrying his daughter is leaving, and then time skip to earlier in the
Yeah.
story to explain all that, and he's filming um, his last kind of words to her. Like it's like, hey, when you're old enough, watch this so that you understand what's happening. But I have to send you away because
Yeah.
the Empire has found out about where we are, uh, but we can't leave because we still need to fight the Empire. And talks about why, they fight the Empire and everything.
Yeah.
And
Tells the story of how her mother died
yeah,
and what it was like on the mining colony that
which
they came from.
this really felt like, the Empire's always been very referential of Nazis, while also, uh, ironically, and you can read into it as much as you want, commentary on 70s and 80s America.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
whatever you want to believe about that.
Dude, there was a whole like communist ousting moment in this.
Yeah,
Like,
well, and this was specifically very Nazi sort of Germany influence, during the circumstances of like Auschwitz and all of that stuff,
yeah.
where it's like it's not just the Nazis that are bad, it's the people that report Jews just to
Yes.
get on the side. It's the people that play to the power that these evil people have.
Yeah, and the word that he uses is collaborators,
Yeah.
which is a very good term.
Yeah. So someone they trusted outed them for merely having a moral compass that didn't agree with the empire, which in Nazi Germany even was enough, even if you weren't
Yeah.
Jew, if you were anti, German regime, that was enough. You were an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very in the famous American words, if you're not with us, you're against us. So if you don't agree with us, you might not actively be a rebel, but that's enough to warrant you getting outed. Or in this case, just death. Like, you know, this was a very visceral one.
Yeah.
If you're very image oriented like I am, I see these stories when I read or hear them. And so to just, like, the way he talks about it with how she was killed, like the instantaneousness of it and the
Mm-hmm.
just, why? Like, he knew we weren't rebels.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's very intense, I'll say, which is very Will Wheaton, I think. He feels and has even been very open with how he struggles with mental health and depression and all of that stuff. And I
Yeah.
see this as being, I'm not trying to say like he forces it in there, but it's just I see him putting his feelings into this.
Yeah. He definitely has a lot of passion for subject matter like this,
Right.
and
And
you could tell.
yeah, and I think the thing isn't to say, oh, I want to make people feel as sad as possible. I think it's more so I want people to understand how a father could give up his daughter to fight this
Mm-hmm.
empire.
Yeah.
Why a regular dude would join guerrilla terrorists essentially to take down the established government, because like I want to get into the nitty-gritty of motivation, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what he does, and it's crazy and intense. um and so, but it all serves to like explain and do this, and I love the point when he's talking to his daughter. He goes into detail about how her mother was killed, but then stops and rewinds and re-records it to leave it at, she fought for what was right.
Yeah.
She stood up no matter what, even when she knew it was dangerous.
Yeah. It's women like her who are behind the rebellion.
Yeah. And I like that in that and I think that's what sets up the notion. Like, oh, they just wanted to throw the saddest story out there to make you feel. No, like he puts it out there and then he retracts it. Leaves it at, you don't need all the grim details. You don't need all of that. You just need to know that your mother did the right thing no matter what, and that's enough. And that's the motivation.
Yeah.
Is giving her legacy. She's like 2, I think he says in the story
Yeah.
or
She's
something like that.
almost 2.
Which I don't know. He might have been a fairly new father when this happened in 2017, right?
No, his kids are grown.
Grown, grown, really?
Like grown, grown.
Really?
Yeah, I
Way to
think
go,
his
Wesley.
no,
Good
they're
on you.
technically his stepchildren,
Oh, okay.
but he adopted them
I
as
thought I
adults.
thought I thought he had a biological kid though.
Mm-mm.
Really?
Yeah, they're
Which
he has
one
two
is the one
boys.
with the pea cup?
Oh, I
uh,
think that's the older one.
you need to look up Will Wheaton pea cup. Uh, don't worry, the FBI won't hurt you, but you definitely need to
Oh,
hear him tell that
it's
story.
the funniest
It's amazing.
story.
So definitely, this is one of my favorites. It feels intensely. It's very
Yeah,
strong. It's very well done.
and the last couple of lines will punch you in the face.
Yeah. So definitely check that one out. I mean, we set it up a lot, but you can still hear all the goings
Yeah.
on, and it's great.
And while you're at it, go read Will Wheaton's other books.
Yeah.
Like, he is a fantastic author. He's written a couple of, I guess, autobiographical books
Mm-hmm.
that are his short stories,
Mm-hmm.
and they are all just, if you like this, you will love them.
Yeah.
Like,
Check it
he's
out.
a fantastic author.
Check out all of these authors' other works, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, I know it's easy to latch onto them because of Star Wars, but so many of them, like for instance, again, Michael Morisi.
Mm-hmm.
We met him because of Star Wars. Hey, you're working on Star Wars comics? Oh, you have other comics? I guess we could check those out. And
Yeah.
now they're some of my absolute favorite
Yeah.
comics.
He is a fantastic author as well.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's like they're great at other things than just Star Wars. So definitely go and support them for that, for sure. If nothing else, find one from every author to add to your list.
Mm-hmm.
Not obviously that's going to take a while to get through, but I mean, just add it to your list. Say eventually I'm going to check this out.
Yeah.
What's really cool is because so many of the authors for the new one, Strikes Back, so many of them had other works also happening alongside that. So
Yeah.
they have Star Wars and other things to be excited about. Which, man, I can only imagine what that's like. Like this thing I love, I'm doing for Star Wars. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy. So
Like, I want to work towards writing
Mhm.
just so I can write a story for the Phantom Menace for
Right?
years.
Yeah. Well,
Like
you've got 16 years.
I'm gonna do my best
Yeah.
because like I want to write the
No, you
story.
got 19 years.
Yeah,
There you go. That's real.
yeah.
That's doable.
I want to write the story of Maul and Palpatine in the transport,
There you go.
just going towards Tatooine and being like, all right, go ahead, buddy. Like,
I
I
want to write the
just,
story about Shmi and Anakin.
oh, you
Yeah.
would hurt me even worse than Will Wheaton. Because,
Hmm.
like, that, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't think about Shmi too hard and then
I
I
would
get
just
sad.
make it autobiographical, but
Oh, yeah.
so support authors. They're
Support
great
authors,
people.
love authors.
Next up is another one of our favorites,
Yes.
someone we absolutely loved meeting and talking to, Cavan Scott.
Kevin Scott,
This dude is amazing.
primo
He's
good
so
boy.
tall,
He's so
and his voice
tall.
is so regal.
Right?
I really, really, really. I mean, I remember at Celebration when I was off doing something. I was off buying something, I think,
Yeah.
and you were just kind of wandering around. I was like, I want to check this out. You just go check something else out.
Yeah.
And so I'm there and I'm standing in line getting stuff, and you text me. It's just like, hey, I met Kevin Scott.
Yeah. I did like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers point and scream, and I
Yeah.
was just like, Kevin Scott.
Yeah. And so you had this whole thing with him, and then it's just like, I get there late, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, wow, this is amazing.
I got my Dooku poster signed.
Yeah.
It was great.
And that's where we set up an interview, and we got to talk about Dooku Jedi
Yeah.
Lost, and
Yeah.
and what was so funny is, how much of that we ended up getting off in like talking about Harry Potter and Doctor Who, and
Yeah. He corrected my perspective on Yoda.
yeah, right?
Like I before meeting Kevin Scott, I had a negative, no, not like completely negative, but I
Hmm.
had a leaning negative opinion of Yoda
Hmm.
and the character that he was. But he changed my perspective,
Hmm.
which, as you know, is kind of hard to do sometimes.
Sure. So
Like
yeah,
Sacha Baron Cohen.
right.
There
There
you
you
go.
go. So yes, Kevin Scott's great. Go support his other works. He does so many Star Wars. He's done so much for Star Wars.
Some
But
iconic Star Wars
yeah,
too.
but he has also written a lot of Doctor Who. So if you love Doctor Who, which ironically we're talking about later on Nerdyverse, so how ironic, how much of a coincidence is
Get
that?
ready for the feels.
So anyway, he got a good one.
Mm-hmm.
This is Time of Death by Kevin Scott.
Yes.
And so this one's from the perspective of Obi-Wan
Mm-hmm.
as he dies. So earlier we get a story of Qui-Gon, the perspective of a Force ghost existing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now we get to see the consciousness of a beloved character moving on.
Yes.
And obviously we know he moves on to be one with the Force, but this is that happening,
Mm-hmm.
which is such a real treat to kind of journey through. It's really interesting. This is a weirder one in the fact of
Yeah.
just how it goes. But I mean, number one, he's dying. Number two, he's like trying to will himself to be one with the Force,
Yeah.
but remember who he is, which apparently is like the whole thing. It's almost like there's this test when you obviously this is fictitious. This is in the Star Wars universe, but it's almost like there's this test when you die of can you remember who you are? Can you remain who you are as you die?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that's the key to eternal life through the Force is do you just get absorbed into the Force and just become life essence in general?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you become life essence that is Obi-Wan? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, because that's essentially like his journey. We can't go through all of it. It's one of the longer stories in this whole
Yeah.
book, but that's essentially what's going on. He's seeing, very stereotypical. The my life flashed before my eyes. Like literally, he's seeing all of these moments. He's seeing Anakin even. He's reliving the duel, and he's seeing it
Mm-hmm.
from he's fighting, the kid. He's fighting the teen. He's fighting, he's. It's all just here's
Yeah.
all the events of your life thrown at you.
Yeah. And the benefit of this coming out after the sequels is he sees Luke as old man Luke.
Yeah, well, I love the moment, and that's when he starts to lean towards becoming one with the Force because now you're seeing beyond. You're not seeing just what you can see.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing beyond what the Force sees. He sees Han die. He sees
Yeah.
Luke, an old hermit, and I love though the moment because he's kind of like sad about that. He's very
Yeah.
like,
He's like,
I wanted him to become more than that. And it's just like,
exactly.
if just wait, because if you knew what he was about to do, like if you knew what he was doing, uh,
Yeah.
you'd be like, you'd be so proud. He's doing what you did.
Hmm.
He learned it from watching you.
It's like I love the fan art that I've seen
Oh
many
yeah, with
times
the
of
ghosts behind him.
exactly.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I love the imagery of that, and I choose to believe that
Yeah.
through the Force that was what was happening
Oh
and
yeah.
everything.
Like you know that in the Force, Yoda and Anakin and Obi-Wan were like giving each other high fives, just like, heck yeah,
You're
we
right.
did that.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. So like, he's transpiring all these events of his life, and even sees moments when
Yeah.
Luke's a kid.
A very good moment when we realize that he's been the one that made the models for Luke that he
Mm-hmm.
plays with, and oh, that
Yeah.
was good.
And so, and what I really enjoy is the parallel of what's happening now
Yeah.
in the events of the film. So after he dies, Luke's getting shot at, and he needs to leave. He's in danger, versus an event that transpired previously. And when I first listened to this, I actually thought that it was happening simultaneous. Like
Hmm.
how like the force is both past, present, future kind of thing. Like I almost saw it as, without realizing it, that event did happen in the past, but it was sort of linked to this moment, that in the Force,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan was defending Luke just like he did at one point. Like you could almost overlay the scenes, and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's how it transpires, but that's how I kind of choose to read it,
Hmm.
just because I love the poeticness of it, the
Yeah.
rhyme. But overall, just that's when he that's that moment, because the link with the past is that's the moment he chose to be Obi-Wan, Jedi Knight, and jump into the fray to save child Luke.
Hmm.
Here he is now. I am Obi-Wan, Jedi Knight, and I'm protecting Luke. Like that's when
Hmm.
you've retained your consciousness. You are Obi-Wan, and you are dead. And I
Hmm.
just love that. I love that it begins and ends on that. I am Obi-Wan, and I am dead.
Yes.
Like, it's so, 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 so good. I love that we got two very weird, interesting Force perspectives in this, both
Hmm.
in an existing ghost, a becoming ghost. It was just so, so, so cool.
Yeah.
And that it was written by two of some of our favorite authors was very, very nice.
Oh, absolutely.
So another one, definitely check it out. Again, it's weirder. I do recommend the audiobook for this one. There's not too
Yes.
many I'm like, you need the audiobook. But this one, just because if you're like me, uh, reading per, I'm trying to think of the way, like visions, uh, uh, what's the mirages, like
Hmm.
things that aren't real that are happening, but like they're not physically happening. Those the way they're written sometimes, and it's not a knock to Cavan. It's just it's the way my brain processes.
Hmm.
Reading it doesn't work as well for me because it's a lot of wait. I need to go back and reread that. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Hearing it makes it much easier to process.
Hmm.
So, like to just digest it, I would recommend listening to it. But definitely, if you want to pick up on little details, you can definitely read it to kind of go at your pace to pick things out and all that good stuff. But
Oh yeah, and you definitely get more emotion that way as well.
oh yeah, more inflection. There's parts in the audiobook that are inflected that probably you wouldn't. And I'm not saying that that's the way they're intended to,
Hmm.
like that, like oh they meant to do it with that word, or if that was just the reader's you know preference.
Yeah.
But regardless, it can still help with the digestion of the story and everything.
Which, while we're talking about audiobooks, I recommend it every time we talk about Star Wars audiobooks. You need to get the Death Troopers audiobook. If
Yeah,
just for the titles,
bubbles.
like the chapter titles are read in such a way that it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So we're in and out on. I, I go back and forth, but I'm going to say probably my favorite.
It's very good.
Um, this begins and ends with great stories, but
Yes.
none so much as Tom Engelberger, who we have met
Yes, we have.
as well. He does a lot of fun Star Wars. People would call it for kids and everything, but I think it's just fun Star Wars.
It's just
Um,
goofy.
exactly, and he brings that here uh, in full form. in Wills. This one is great because is it canon?
I
Is it
think
not?
so.
I
I
you
hope
you
so.
decide. But it's from the perspective of two Wills, which if you don't know, so originally Star Wars was going to be, and the reason it was very um, written, very archaeologically written, was it was the
Yes.
idea that it's from a journal of the Wills. That was way back in the day idea of Star Wars, that it was a New Hope, an entry from the journal of the Wills or something like that, and
Hmm.
that's the whole reason that there's a long time ago, like it's being written, and then it transitions from writing to visual and everything like that, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
The Wills have kind of come back into being through Dave Filoni and the Clone Wars a little bit more.
Hmm.
We have the Guardians of the Wills in Rogue One. Like they exist within canon, but does this really happen? We don't know, but it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
It's one Will trying to write Episode 4, and it's the other one taking issue with how he's writing Episode 4.
If you ever wanted to firsthand experience a conversation between us about some things,
Right.
read this.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna. We're not gonna. First of all, it's only like a 7-8 minute
Yeah.
story. It's not that long. It's not meant to be. It's just enough to get you interested and give you a good laugh. So check this one out. It's hilarious. If anything, read this one first.
Yeah.
Start here, and it'll convince you to read everything else. But hopefully, ideally, you'll go back and read everything because of what we've discussed today. Hopefully, if not, fine. Maybe you just enjoyed listening to these perspectives. But we can't recommend this enough. We can't recommend you try out the new one enough. It's out now, so definitely local bookstore or Audible.
Hmm.
Both are great and viable options and highly recommended. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to all of our patrons who support what we do. Doug, Jim, and Rebecca, you guys are awesome. Um, Thank you to everybody else that likes, shares, and all that good stuff. Thank you to Game Infinite.
Yeah.
I'm wearing merch. I am merch. Thank you to Game Infinite. Jesse, you're awesome. If you love game news, if you love game content, cosplay, art, and all of that good stuff, and reviews, blogs, and just the latest news about your favorite games or games maybe will become your favorite, Game Infinite on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Um, like it, follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff to get that in your news feeds, and go to support a good friend of ours, Jesse. You can also check out Star Wars Infinite. We manage that over on Instagram. We post art, cosplay, trivia, all kinds of cool stuff. So if you want more Star Wars in your Graham life, then go check that out. Hashtag Graham life.
Hashtag Graham Life.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a good Graham.
Knitting granny squares.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Yes.
What do you call a delivery service that delivers grandmothers?
Instagram.
Shut up. Oh, if I told you that story already, or that joke.
Also, check out all of our friends over at Red5Network.
Yes,
They
please.
podcast way better than us and are better uses of your time. But thank you for giving us your time. But check them out. They do a lot of other great things as well. And with that, I think we are good. We have already said, and but just as a reminder, we're back with Nerdiverse later, and we're going to be talking about Doctor Who. Um,
Yes.
if you don't know what that is, I recommend you Google it, check it out beforehand, because it's too much to explain in a single episode. So we kind of need you to kind of have an idea of what it is before you come to that episode. But
Yes.
we're going to be talking about our favorite episodes, so we'd love to hear yours, and all that good stuff. Favorite Doctor, all that good
Favorite doctor.
stuff. That tells you a lot about a person. So, but
It do.
yes. So with that, we'll see you when we see you. Bye.